This is the second talk in the museum's Sites of Power Race and Visual Culture lecture series that we've put on with several people that I will thank in a moment. And we're so thrilled to have this as a part of programming that's ongoing with our exhibition upstairs called For All the World to See, Visual Culture and the Struggle for Civil Rights. If you haven't seen it already, please take the time to do so. It runs through October 20th. And I hope you'll have a chance to walk around the exhibition or to check out the really wonderful catalog that's associated with it by scholar Maurice Berger, who curated the exhibition. We do have those upstairs in the museum store. So please go ahead and mark your calendars or grab a flyer at the table just outside the entrance for the last lecture in the series. That's going to be by UC Santa Cruz sociologist Dr. Herman Gray, and that will be on October 18th. And I also have to quickly mention a special event on Saturday, September 29th from 1 to 4 p.m. It's a family day, but this time is also going to be a community day that will involve some really great collaborations with local folks, including Striped Light. You can make your own protest poster that day, as well as some musical performances. So join us that day if you can. And finally, before I introduce the professor who will introduce the speaker, I also want to thank UT's Ready for the World initiative for the support of the exhibition and the intersectionality community of scholars for helping to put together this speaker series. A big thank you to the Mildred Haynes and William Elijah Morris Lecture Endowment and the Departments of Art and Architecture, Africana Studies, Philosophy, Psychology, and Sociology for making Sites of Power possible. And now on to our guest of honor this evening. I cannot think of anyone more fitting to be a speaker that's associated with this show. For those of you who don't know Sheila's work, she's known internationally for her contributions to protest photography and her explorations of the role that images play in mediating politics and provoking social change. Today we have Althea Murphy-Price, Associate Professor in the School of Art, here to introduce her.
Hi. Again, thank you, as Kat has said before, thank you so much for coming to this lecture. We're really excited to have Sheila Pree Bright here. I've tremendously enjoyed my time with her today, her insight. And I want to also give some thanks as well to School of Art Programming Committee, also the Diversity Committee, who had a large part in facilitating, along with the McClung Museum, and facilitating Sheila Pree Bright's visit here. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce her. I would refer to, and to many of you, I've referred to Sheila as a photographer and a social activist. Many describe her as a cultural anthropologist, but she describes herself as a visual cultural producer. She's portraying large-scale works combined with a wide range of contemporary art. She received her BS in textile design, so Bachelor of Science in Textile Design from the University of Missouri in 1998, and her M.F.A. from Georgia State University in 2003. She is often recognized for her photographic series, Young Americans, Plastic Bodies, and Suburbia. Recently, Sheila has been documenting responses to the police shootings in Atlanta, Ferguson, Baltimore, and Washington, D.C. However, her most current and ambitious project has been the 1960s Now, a photographic series of emerging leaders affiliated with the Black Lives Movement. This examines race, gender, and generational divides in order to raise awareness to the awareness of millennia perspectives on civil rights and human rights. Her work has been included in the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, the Costia Community Museum, which is affiliated in part of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., the Museum of Contemporary Art of Cleveland, PhotoFest Houston, the Art Gallery of Hamilton and Ontario, Canada, and the Alicia Gallery in New York. She is a recipient of several awards, including the Santa Fe Prize in 2006, and most recently the 2018 ImageMaker Award. Her work is included in numerous private and public collections, including the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., the Oppenheimer Collection, Nerman Museum of Contemporary Art in Overland, Kansas, the National Center of Civil and Human Rights in Atlanta, Georgia, the BET Collection of New York, Sprint PCS Art Collection, the Paul Jones Collection, the High Museum of Art in Atlanta, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Atlanta, the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., Spelman Museum of Fine Art, Clark Atlanta University Galleries, and the University of Georgia in Athens, Georgia. Her work has been featured in the book Posing Beauty in African American Culture by Deborah Lewis in 2014, and the documentary Through the Lens Darkly, Black Photographers and the Emergence of People, but directed and produced by Thomas Allen Harris, and the documentary film Election Day, Lens Across America, in which 7 photographers on Election Day in 2016 captured images from different vantage points across America. And that was created by Henry Robinson and Emma Tammy. So without further ado, I'm pleased to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Sheila Pree Bright.
Good evening, and I would like to thank the University of Tennessee for having me here. And we're at a really critical time in our country right now and what we're all going through. And as an artist, I call myself actually a photographic artist. A lot of people call me a lot of different things. But I call myself not necessarily an activist. I call myself an actionist. I felt as an artist that I needed to take action. And I'm going to talk a little bit about me and my work so you have an understanding of why I do what I do. And I really want to make this a conversational piece. I just don't want to be up here talking. If there's something that you want to engage me with and talk, feel free and we can do that. So the image that you see right now is my father. I'm a daughter of a soldier. And my father actually was born in a little town called Waycross, Georgia, about 4 hours away from Atlanta, Georgia. And back in the 60s, in the early 60s, he was very vocal in that time period as a black man. And that's how he got into the service. He had to get out of town. Either he was going to be lynched or he was going to be put in jail. And so I think that's where I got my foundation from and my bravery from, based on the recent work that I'm doing. And I started a body of work called Young Americans in 2006. And at the time, I was thinking about young people, the millennials, because the millennials is the largest generation in history, the most diverse generation in history. And I wanted to know what their thoughts were when it came about America. And the one question that I asked them, what does it mean to be an American in the 21st century? This was around the time period when President Obama was actually announcing his presidency. And there was a lot of things were going on. They were talking about post-racial black and all of that, But we know that's not true. It actually made it worse, actually. So I went around the country and I photographed the young Americans and told them, do whatever you want and let's talk about America. And this is Morgan. She talked about, that's a Statue of Liberty. She talked about, I'm a confused black woman because of the injustices here in America. And what other better place to be but in America? So she came in with the Black Power fist and the colors of the liberation flag and the Statue of Liberty. I'm not going to talk about all of them. I just want you guys to really engage into the work with that. It's altar of sacrifice. This is Myra. She's from Celanese, and she talked about how she wasn't in this country. At the age of 18, she would have been dead. I went from the South to California, back. I didn't go to all the different states, and I was in Connecticut. And this is Jenny. She talked about she came over to this country at the age of 6, and she felt that she did not belong in this country because of the way that she was been treated. And she always wondered if she never came, what would it have been like. And as an artist, I'm really interested in individuals and communities that are often muted and unheard. And I capture images for all of us to experience of the voices of the unheard while they voice or contemplate their issues that's concerning them at the time that's shaping their world. This is Colin. This was in Winston, South Carolina. And this was my only image. He didn't talk much. He was very quiet. I watched him fold up this flag in a square. And he just sat it down, put his hands in his pocket, and he looked away. And this work was in between 2006 and 2008, and I had my first solo show at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta with this body of work. And I find this work very, very interesting because this was taken in 2007, and we all know the issues around Colin Kaepernick and the American flag and how that narrative was changed. This reminds me of the Black Lives Matter and the die-ins when they started with Trayvon Martin. So I come from out of galleries and museums, and at that time in 2013, I really wanted my work to get across to the masses of people. So I had the opportunity in Atlanta to start wheat pasting my images on walls, and this is one of the first images that I was able, and it's on David T. Howard Building in Atlanta. And at that time, Trayvon Martin happened. And I started thinking about young people, because I said, in order for this country to change, I feel that young people are always the one globally, the one that's going to take a stand to make a change. So I started thinking about the young people in the civil rights movement. And I wanted to engage with them. They're older now, they're like 70 and 80. I wanted to find out who the unknown civil rights members were. And I started to develop a body of work come 1960 now. This was all at the same time when Trayvon Martin was happening. And I found freedom riders. This is Charles Person. He was the first, 19 years old, he did the freedom rides in the buses to Anniston, Alabama. And so I would place them on walls. And in Atlanta, they had the HCBU universities where you had Morris Brown, Clark Atlanta, Spelman, and, Morehouse. Thank you. You went to Morehouse, right. Yeah, Morehouse. And Lonnie King, I want to talk about her too, but let me go back to this. Lonnie King, I found him, he started the Atlanta student movement. He was going to college at Morehouse. He rounded up all of the students from all of the colleges, and they said, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired. We got to make a change. They got kicked out actually off of campus for doing the sit-ins and stuff. And these are members of Morris Brown. And this was Kathleen. Jill, do you remember her name? I don't remember her name. This is my husband, y'all. Putting them on the spot. Yeah. Yeah. Minnesota. I found what you call the Minnesota Six. And it was 5 white males and 1 white woman that were in Minnesota, and they decided to come to the South. Because at that time, there was no internet. It was the TV. And when they saw the injustices that were happening in the South, they were like, oh my God, we got to come to the South and we got to help. She was at the age of 23, and she was so excited, but she said when she crossed the Mason-Dixie line, that's when fear came to her, because they stopped at a gas station and they had to use the restroom. She did not want to use the signs where the white restrooms were. She wanted to go to the black. But an officer pulled her to a side and said, you cannot do that, because she got beaten down behind that. And she's still living. She's in Minnesota. And the 2 that you see right now is to the right is Mr. Lonnie King. And the woman to your left is Dr. Rosalind Pope. She went to Spelman at the age of 19. She authored The Appeal of Human Rights. This is Hank Thomas. He actually passed away 2 months ago, and he was a freedom rider. That's how I the work evolved into 1960 now. I myself wanted to go to the ground to find what was going on, because when it comes to the media, the stories that have been told in the media, basically, through my experience, all of it is not true at all, at all, at all. And that, for the most part, globally, the white male narrative has always been into the marginalized community, telling those stories from that perspective. And I'm think about Africa everywhere. It's been told by that perspective. So I felt as an artist that you hear a lot of people talk about reclaiming. What are we reclaiming? Because we've always seen ourselves through the eyes of the white male narrative, especially black bodies. I am not reclaiming, I'm claiming. And that's what I tell everybody. And so I started off on my venture from Atlanta, and I met a lot of the young activists that were on the ground. This is Bree Newsom. These are your peers. She's the one that took down the Confederate flag. He is from the LGBTQ community. Believe it or not, with Black Lives Matter, when the hashtag started, it started right after Trayvon Martin, when Zimmerman got off for killing Trayvon. And 3 women, 2 queer women, were so upset. They said, we have to uplift our black folks. And so they start, Batiste is the one, it's Batiste, Opal, and Alicia Garza. And they felt that Black Lives Matter, they were just having a conversation. And so they came up with a hashtag and they put it up on the internet. It wasn't, okay, we live in the world of social media, right? So that hashtag was an upliftment for black people to make them feel good about themselves. Black Lives Matter. It was no different than from the 1960s when James Brown had the song, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. He wanted to uplift black folks. Anytime you have anything that has black power, Black Lives Matter is like, oh, that's a very, very negative, okay? But it's not. It's to uplift. It was like a love letter to black folks. And that's how the hashtag was actually created. And the LGBT community is the force behind Black Lives Matter, believe it or not. And this is Emiko. She was really instrumental in pushing the protests too with Black Lives Matter, but she also has a university called Freedom University for the undocumented students. They were out there actually there too. So in 2000, I believe in 2015, I got a call and they said, Sheila, we need you to come down. This is in Atlanta, Martin Luther King parade. They said, we're getting ready to shut down the parade, the young people. And they had the hashtag, in which this is proper, Reclaim Martin Luther King Day. And basically what Reclaim Martin Luther King Day is about is that the young people are sick and tired of the commercialization of Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. He was much more than a dream. He was about resistance. He was about carrying on the work that was left off from Martin Luther King being killed. And what happened was when they took over the parade, and it's a little bit different in Atlanta, you have a lot more police officers that are black. The kids did the die-ins and the sit-ins, the young people, the die-ins and the sit-ins. And the cops said, I'll be damned. They then took over the parade, and they let them take over the parade. And when they got to the center of Martin Luther King, what happened was they went to the podium. This is Ariel. They were all out in the street. This is a shot that I took at the moment where, when they finally got to their destination, where Martin Luther King's nonprofit organization is at, they ran and took charge of the stadium. And I was not able to get on. And Ariel, what she did was I gave her my camera underneath, and I got up on there. She gave it to me, and I was able to take this photograph, Speak No Evil. And the elders were upset with them, very, very upset with them. They said, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, because Martin Luther King would not have liked this. And they said, yes, he would. He would be very proud of us. Say her name, Alex and Christian. This is Janelle Monáe. You guys know who Janelle Monáe is, right? Say her name. You know her. She got that new CD out now, right? What's the name of it? Right. I know you guys. Yeah. But she actually felt compelled as an artist. She's a celebrity. And she did a protest song, Say Her Name, and she was out there. And this is, do you guys know who this is? He's on her label. He plays the guitar, and I can't think of his name. It's very, very emotional out there with the protest. The young people are hurting. There's a lot. If you can understand this, when it comes to black bodies, it's constant. Black bodies are constantly being terrorized, okay? And this starts back, I say, from Africa, from slavery on to now, okay? And I wanted to show in my work, I'm shooting purposely in black and white, and I'm shooting square. I look at these images, portraits, not really protest images. I'm waiting actually for the moment to click on my shutter. And I want to show a black male showing how I don't look at the protesters or the communities as victims. I know in journalism, I don't have a background in journalism, but what was told to me is that they are being taught to go into these marginalized communities and look at them as victims. That's what's been taught. I don't look at that like that. I look at these as human beings and people. And I wanted to show a black male crying, not the one that you see in the media. By the time you see it, it's like, oh, he's an angry black male and he's very defiant, okay? But you don't know what's going on. When I was in West Baltimore, I was there when Freddie Gray passed that Sunday. And I don't know the community. I don't know anything about West Baltimore. I immediately went down there on Monday with my sister's car, didn't know that she didn't have no gas in the car, okay? And so when I got there, I was so amazed. Now, I've been to Detroit, I've seen the communities, but Baltimore, it's like a third world country. I'm telling you, it's like a third world country. And as soon as I got out, the police station is right in the middle of the community, and it's taped off what the police officers are around. And let me tell you this story before I move on. I was so amazed. I started photographing the landscape versus the people. All of a sudden, I got totally cussed out. They told me to get the hell out of here. We don't want you here, white people here, or the media here, because the only time when you come into these communities is you want to talk about something negative. You're not here when we're down the street, so we're cleaning up the community. You're not here when we're trying to deal with violence in our community, but you're here for the riots. And so I was like, oh my God, what am I going to say? And, you know, you have to really think fast on your feet, really. And I'm kind of like girlish like, and I said, well, I'm from the home of the civil rights movement, and I'm here. I want to help. I want to tell our stories. And I was around the gangsters and stuff, and everybody looked me up and down and gave me a nod and said, okay. And this woman came up to me, and she said, I'm going to tell you the truth. She said, I just got out of jail. And she said, do you have any money? And I said, ma'am, I don't have any money, but I could give you a hug. We hugged and we cried. That really makes me emotional to this day. But we cried, but then we moved on because I knew that I had to go and I had to photograph. And when I was in Ferguson, I didn't go to Ferguson in the heat of the uprising. I went after. And when I went after, it was a lot. You could feel the tension in the air. The tension was in the air. And we actually marched up to the police station because you're going to see a video. They had the young people out. What I noticed about in Ferguson, that different from Baltimore, the young people and the elders were really very close-knitted with that. And they had the young people in the forefront with this. And Michael Brown, this is Mike Brown's father, senior. I wanted to catch that moment of him and the solitude. And I'm pointing my camera to what I want you to look at, Mike Brown, Chosen for Change. And that's him. I see a black man with confidence. I don't see a black man that's defiant. A lot of people that are not used to an image like this, they'll say, oh, he's defiant. No, he's not. We love our people, and we will be there until justice is done, served. The flag is in distress. This is Baltimore. The young people in Baltimore, I'm telling you, they were marching 24/7. They were peaceful. It was a peaceful march, okay? It's not what you hear on TV. And when the news people come in, it's like, I don't know, it's like a parade from them. The camera guys, they go and put the cameras in their faces, and they say, man, didn't I tell you to get the camera out my face? But they will not. They're very, very aggressive with it. And by that time, you see the anger, and then that's what you see on TV, and that's what they put on the media. The city of Baltimore don't care about black lives. It's about the numbers and how many locks up. I saw the police officers, and I could feel them too. It's like on both sides, it's a sense of sadness to me. Baltimore. It's reminded me of an old photograph. And I shot in black and white and call it 1960 now because it's like, what has changed? The young people said we're fighting the same fights our grandparents and parents in fight. This is like in the history books, but it's in real time. It's Baltimore. And then I went into D.C. because the New York Justice League actually marched from New York to D.C., and a lot of people were saying like they're not strategizing, they're not organizing, but actually they marched and they gave a package to the President Obama administration they called the Justice Package. So by that time, I was back in Atlanta, and we had the back-and-back shootings of Philip Castillo and Austin Sterling in Baton Rouge. This was the first time that I saw a lot of the students and more whites that came out with the back-and-back shooting. Scott, capture this as my daddy next. And what was so funny, one of the young persons that were marching with us, we all know him, his parents own Cox Media. And he was so upset because what the police officers were doing in Atlanta, because you had the GBI out there, the state troopers out there, you had every kind of person that was in the government was there. And we were in Buckhead. If anybody know anything about Atlanta and Lenox, that's where we were at. And they were sitting in front of Lenox and would not move at all. And Fergie, he said, I am so upset. We're going to go over to my parents' place in Buckhead, and we're going to do a protest over there. Because what the cops were doing was trying to do scare tactics. What they would do, they would drive up when we were marching down the street real fast in the car, stop it and get out. And what do you call those when they arrest people? It's the tags. What do you call those? Come on, y'all. You know what those are. Okay, nobody's never been arrested. Okay. Okay. And he had all of them around him like this and came out like he was this big bad cop trying to put fear in us, okay? But they kept on marching. And so Fergie said, white people, are y'all ready to get arrested? If you are, come with me. They got up. They came on the sides of the, when you march, and all the people of color were on the inside, so when the cops grabbed them, they would grab the white folks, and they went to jail. And this is them out in the middle of the street. We are not disposable. 16 years old, she told her father that she wanted to come out, and she wanted to march. And she put this was a silence march called I Can't Breathe. And Atlanta's kind of an interesting place. You guys heard the thing, A City Too Busy to Hate. Andrew Young, you guys know who Andrew Young is, right? Come on in here. You guys know who Andrew Young is? He was in the civil rights movement. He was one of the mayors back, I can't remember what year he was a mayor. He actually got on national TV, and when they were protesting 7 days straight of the back-to-back shootings, and he called the young people unlovable brats. So what the young people did, got T-shirts, unlovable brats, and went to the city and they did protest. Black Lives Matter, white silence is violence. This is when I went to Baton Rouge. I was around the Crips and the Bloods and the Black Panthers. My husband, he told me that I wasn't going to go down there. I said that I was going to go down there. So he came with me, and we stopped in New Orleans at the hotel. You remember that? And as soon as we put our bags in the hotel, I grabbed my bag and ran out and said, "Have no fear." And he's just standing up there looking at me like, this woman, okay? And I went to Baton Rouge, and he's a Blood, young kid, and he's got no justice, no peace. There was so much of a bubbling there. There was no Black Lives Matter there at all because the Black Matters told the other chapters not to come down. We're going to handle this ourselves. But the Black Panthers from Florida was down. And I went over there and started talking to them. And by that time, they said right before you came, the police kind of arrested all of us. I said, well, where are you guys going? Well, we're going to go down to the police station. So I stayed in the neighborhood. You had people just on the corners with signs, and people just driving their cars real fast. There were the elders over there talking about Martin Luther King. Nobody was really paying attention to him. It was just so much of a bubbling. And a young lady came up to me and she said, "You're not from here." I said, "No, I'm not." But I said, "I'm with you." She said, "I tell you what," she said, "by the time it gets dark, you need to get out of here." And I did actually leave that time when she said that. Yeah. America, the horror story, a black tale. DNC was very, very interesting. The FBI came to the Black Lives Matter and told them not to march. So what they did was got a permit under the DNC, shut it down. Droves of young people were at the DNC, and their whole purpose there was to overthrow the nomination of Clinton and bring Bernie in. That was their call for action. I was there for 4 days straight, and you could not, if you saw any posters or signs, it was very few of Clinton. You thought Bernie was the nomination. And what was happening, it was the delegates took over a media tent and wanted their voices to be heard, but they would not let them hear them. And so they were taking their badges from them and locking the door. I stayed on the ground with the people. So the Black Lives Matter actually did a protest from the City Hall in the evening, and we marched all the way up to the Wells Fargo Center. And all of the Bernie supporters were in the back, and the Black Lives Matters with the F-150s. It was very, very interesting because by the time we got there, there was another group of Bernie supporters coming this way. And they wanted to, the people that were coming this way asked me, who were they? And I said, well, this is Black Lives Matter. They're the ones that's leading the march. And they were like, hell yeah. They said, Black Lives Matter is with us. Do you know what the Black Lives Matter people told them? And this is really real, you guys. They said, you're not about no, and I'm going to say what they said, you're not about no goddamn liberation. Can you understand why they said that? Ever since Trayvon Martin was, and black bodies been falling by police brutality, nobody was speaking out. But when if there was a protest within a protest within a protest at the DNC, and that's how they felt. So they went their way, and the Bernie supporters went their way. We're not starting a race war. We're trying to stop it. And what I can say about all that, right now, we are in a critical state, and there are protests within a protest, from LBGT to the Me Too to the the guns. They have, the slogan for that. It's a protest within a protest, but I feel sometimes that, if I could say it like this, is that we're constantly still in our own little tribes. We say we want to come together, but do we really want to come together? And how can we hold each other accountable and how we can move forward? Because we all know in here that we all know what the problems are. Everybody is feeling in a certain way. Even the Trump supporters are feeling a certain way. So how can we move forward as a country if we want to move forward? And what I'm going to do is leave you with a short film that I did while I was on the ground photographing protests, and I incorporated Martin Luther King, James Baldwin, Shirley Carmichael, and Nina Simone. And then it gives you, and the only footage that I did not shoot is with Geraldo in it, when one of the activists, Kwame Rose, confronted him in Baltimore. Oh, and let me tell you this about Baltimore, and I'm going to tell you the film, because everybody heard about Baltimore and the uprising. That was not in the black community. When I was there, it was on the harbor, and at that time I had to go to D.C. because I had to do a talk, but I didn't get back to Baltimore until 12 o'clock that night. That's when the uprising, the young people call it the uprising, and it was through the day. And what happened was they have a baseball, stadium there. And when the fans came out, they was marching peacefully, and the fans started calling them niggers and monkeys. That's what you don't hear in the media. That's when they went berserk and they tore up the harbor. It was not in the black community at all. And I'm going to leave you with this film.
I remember you was conflicted, misusing your influence. Sometimes I did the same, abusing my power full of resentment that turned into a deep depression. Found myself screaming in the hotel room. I didn't want to self-destruct. The evils of Lucy was all around me, so I went running for answers.
I would not say that the civil rights movement is dead. It's simply that we're moving to a new phase of the movement. For now 12 years, we struggled to end legal segregation and all of the humiliation surrounding legal segregation. So it was a struggle for decency. It was a struggle to get rid of extremist behavior toward Negroes. Now we're in a new phase, and that is a phase where we are seeking genuine equality, where we are dealing with hard economic and social issues. And it means that the job is much more difficult. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter.
From this day forward, we will say the people woke up again. And we started to treat Martin Luther King Day as a day of resistance for a resistant, militant fighter. It is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win.
I was born again
We
in the
must
streets
love
of
each
Ferguson.
other and support each other.
I saw in the faces of young, black, angry, queer, single mothers, kids with tattoos, sagging their pants, standing up before tanks and tear gas night after night. And so it changed me. It changed my belief in the capacity of the church to be able to support and celebrate our children who are victimized daily.
United we stand. United we fall. 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 Well, show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. Show me what what democracy looks like.
Dr. King's policy was that nonviolence would achieve the gains for black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you are nonviolent, if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and will be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one fallacious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience. The United States has none. Has none.
There are days, this is one of them, when you wonder what your role is in this country and what your future is in it.
From my point of view, no label, and no slogan, and no party, and no skin color, and indeed no religion is more important than the human being.
Abusing my power full of resentment. Resentment that turned into a deep depression. Found myself screaming in the hotel room. I didn't want to self-destruct. The evils of Lucy was all around me. So I went running for answers.
Intellectually, having no, don't walk away once we start talking. That's the problem with the media. Because you want to report that we're thugs and we're breaking shit down. You got these big black things protecting you from all these black folks. We're the ones that need protection. Work for us. You're working for Fox News. Adam Jackson just went on Sean Hannity. Why are you running away? I'm not going to throw it in your ass.
He's running. He got the wrong order right, y'all. He got the wrong order right.
He just talked to me. Yeah, because you're not trying. So we are angry. But listen, a black man can raise his voice. A black man can raise his voice. And you don't have to be intimidated. Because I want you and Fox News to get out of Baltimore City. Because you're not here reporting about the boarded up homes and the homeless people under M.F.A. You're not reporting about the poverty levels up and down North Avenue. 2 years ago, when the 300-man march, we marched from the top of Oakland from Hilton and North to Milton and North, you weren't here. But you're here for the black riots that happened. You're not here for the death of Freddie Gray. I'm here your story. No, I want to talk to you without the cameras. Hey, I'm here.
Where were our brothers and sisters to stand with us? Where were the clergy people to stand with us? Where were the politicians to stand with us?
An artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. I think that is true of painters, sculptors, poets, musicians. As far as I'm concerned, it's their choice. But I choose to reflect the times and the situations in which I find myself. That to me is my beauty. And at this crucial time in our lives, when everything is so desperate, when every day is a matter of survival, I don't think you can help but be involved. Young people, black and white, know this. That's why everybody is so involved in politics. We will shape and mold this country, or it will not be molded and shaped at all. So I don't think you have a
Sean Bell. Say his name. Sean Bell. Say his name. Sean Bell. Say his name. Sean Bell, what you say? His name. Michael Brown. Say his name. Michael Brown. Say his name. Michael Brown. Say his name. We're gonna be all right. We ought to come together. And we should not let no police, let no hater, let no spectator, or let somebody, listen, look around you. They don't kill each other.
Love each other.
Unity. United we stand.
Divided we fall.
And divided we fall. No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
No justice.
No peace.
And support each other.
We have nothing to lose but our change. Thank you.
So I still have hope. I found this magazine and it's called Youth in Power. The youth is going to make change globally. Maybe, and I'm beginning to see that a bit. But I just feel that, you know, do we really want to come together? And who are we? The question was with young Americans then, but is who are you? What are the 21st? I can't even think right now. But the question at the end is I wanted to ask every one of you, who are we? And with that, I want to leave it open for questions. Does anybody have any questions? And while she gets the book, I have a book coming out, 1960 Now. It's being published by Chronicle Books. I feel this would be an important book for education because it's not just about the protest images. I actually have the elders that were in the movement in here along with the young people. And I'm talking about intergenerational because there's a lot of history that even myself that I did not know that I'm actually learning from the elders that they don't teach us in history books at all. And I think it's a start. No question? Oh yeah, I didn't talk about that. He's talking about the murals that I put up at the David T. Hart with the Young Americans. That building is very significant because Martin Luther King went there, and the guy that they named it after, what is his name? David T. Howard. He was one of the first black billionaires. Yeah, and that actually built that school. So they're reopening the school, and they actually want me to preserve those images because what I do out in the streets is paper and glue, and eventually it's going to deteriorate. So we're trying to find a way to keep that on the school building. Yeah. Yeah. Actually, this is a short. I want to move into moving images, but 1960 Now is going to be a traveling show, and it's the portraits, the protests, and the short film. So they're going to try to travel it to all of the universities because I think it's very important for the young people to really understand what's going on with Black Lives Matter because the media depict them as a terrorist group. It's not a terrorist group at all. It's just young people getting together because they're tired. And black bodies are continuing to being shot down. You don't hear about it a lot in the media, but it's still there. But what Black Lives Matter chapter is doing, they're organizing in their communities because one thing about Bernie, when I was at the DNC, he told everybody to go back home and organize, and that's what you're seeing, what you call socialist Democrats and the progressive. That's all coming from the Bernie camp because they believe that voting is the one that's going to really help, to come out of that. But that film is part of an exhibit. It's not like on social media or anything like that.
Another program group.
Right.
And the idea that there would be micro-protests. And so is there the sense that Bernie was able to sort of even overarching kind of...
I think so because...
The necessity for those micro-protests is still maintain their autonomy.
Right.
Sort of keep it as solid as possible for what they need to say.
Yeah, I think so, because one thing about Bernie is the diversity of the young people. Like I was saying with the millenniums, it's just not black and white, it's all diversity. And young people, the ones that everybody, like I said, is feeling something, but when it comes to the young people with Bernie, they actually looking up to him. And that's why the young woman in New York, Latin, it was a shock that she won that seat, and she's calling herself a socialist Democrat. Yeah, and she's Latin.
Thanks for a lovely and wonderful lecture, Sheila. 2 years ago, we had Thomas Allen Harris here, and he screened Virulence Darkly, and it was actually in this auditorium where he gave a lecture on his work. And I'm interested in your thoughts as someone who studies art and photography in relationship to all the people who have a camera in their pocket today, just in terms of witness to history. As someone who's trained as a photographer and so forth, using it as a tool, as a witness to history, some thoughts about the extent to which even making images about this movement in terms of ones that come from inside, from people who don't think of themselves as photographers, adding to that visual history and that visual culture.
I think we're living in interesting times, and when it comes to social media, everybody has those smartphones. And if it wasn't for those smartphones, what was going on with the communities, we would have never known about this at all, because the media is going to frame it in a different way. So I think it's good, but in another way, we become numb to these images. Like I said, you're still having black bodies being killed. You're still seeing all that. And I think we just become, it's like the norm, you know? So the technology is here. I think it's good, because one thing about it, back in the 60s, it wasn't until the, I think Bloody Sunday, when they air that on TV, that's when a lot more people started coming into the movement, and it's no different than social media. And for the young people, I remember when Trayvon first got killed, they were doing the die-ins. I mean, they were actually using strategy, and you would see them taking photographs of themselves, and you're like, oh my God, they're doing selfies. No, they're not. That was going globally, because everybody from the other country and a lot of the African countries is looking at America with this. So I think it's good in some sense, in some ways. I think maybe we have become numb to this imagery. So what do we do about that, you know?
What Thomas was talking about very interesting is the ways in which children are truth use photographs of her own body, as well as considering, I mean, I think the Emmett Till example, just
right, the mother.
How critical, and maybe we live in, do you think we live in too visually a saturated world, and we're suggesting we're becoming desensitized? Is it the photographic reality is becoming a kind of status quo or something that we're desensitized to?
I think so, in a sense, we're becoming desensitized. You know, what is it going to make us move? Like I said, we all know what the issues and the problems are, and we're constantly seeing this. And I know a lot of people that I know won't even watch TV anymore, or can't hardly watch Facebook or get on Instagram anymore. Maybe once a month because of that. Nobody wants to deal with that reality that we're in. Mm-hmm. Yes. Hi.
From all of your experiences in different communities and protests, what would you say? How do you see the value of protesting so rally white nationalist groups when they come together to march or rally or whatever? The value of going to oppose that.
Well, yeah. We live in a country in America where we talk about freedom of speech. So, and Martin Luther King talking about protest was voice of the unheard. Okay. When it comes to the white nationalists, I think when you give that a lot of airtime, I mean, to me, it's a little bit different because of what they're projecting, okay? And it keeps the country divided when it comes to the movement of gun laws or Black Lives Matter. That's a human rights issue. White nationalism, is that a human rights issue? Can we talk about that? Is that a human rights issue? I don't know. And it keeps the country divided. Because we are divided. It's like this is like a perpetual revolution. Are we learning from our history because it's repeating itself? That's why I call this body of work 1960 Now. And I think that's something that we have to think about. I'm glad that you brought up that point about the white nationalism. Is that a civil or a human rights issue?
Like going to where they're living slavery, you know, 100 years back or whatever, and being present to say that you're not okay with that, be a body of people protest those things, that's what they're saying. Is there value in that, or does it propagate this adversarial devices?
I think it propagates it. Has anybody seen Black Klansman? I think you all need to go see that because at the end, Spike Lee actually put that, the way that he juxtaposed it with the Klansmen and put that in. I think that's very important because that's part of history and knowledge, because a lot of people may not understand what's really going on with that, you know? But we're talking about think about the Me Too movement, think about the young people in Parkland and those issues. I mean, those are very, very important issues. You know, when it comes to the white nationalists, it's a lot of fear because they feel that the white male is losing their power, okay? Because I don't know what year with the Census Bureau, they're saying that by the year of I don't know what year, this country is going to be a mixed race. That's what that's about.
Representing protest and the social purpose of it. I'm especially struck by this notion and having right now this fall of how dramatic these images are and how powerful they are. But I guess I wonder, do you see hope for some social action as a result of their art? Because, like, for example, we're in the middle of the last 2 weeks before all the students at the campus can register to vote. I don't see an uprising of young people who have campus looking to vote. I often feel like I'm pleading to my students to register. So I guess I would put that you as an artist, you feel like your art has are you hoping for a social action as well?
Like a call for action? Yeah. I could tell you this. I feel that I'm a messenger and that I'm bringing awareness. I cannot change anybody. I can't change anybody. Either you're going to accept it or not accept it. And when it comes to the voting, a lot of the young people don't believe in the voting. These institutions in America is rooted in racism. That's the fabric of America. So they don't believe in that. So how are you going to make them believe in that? I know that you're having younger, like I was talking about the social Democrats, that she's only 29 years. So I think voting is very important, but I don't think voting alone is going to change the world. I think the protest, what everybody's doing, the protest is going to change, because if you don't, because you need all of it. You need the protest, you need the people in the office, because I don't know this for sure, but it seems like a lot of the politicians that are in these positions, they talk a good game, but once they get in there, because it's all about the money and the power and the economics. That's why Martin Luther King was murdered. When he started talking about the Vietnam War, economics, bringing everybody together and poor people together, guess what happened? That's why I said, does this country want to come together? Or is it going to always be like that? So that's a hard question as far as the voting, because I'm around a lot of young people that they're gung-ho about voting, then I'm around a lot of them like, When I did the documentary for the 7 photographers where I had to shoot for the voting for when the presidency with Trump and Clinton, one of the assistants that was with us, he said he wasn't going to vote. He says it's not going to change anything. So how do you change that? It's not until these institutions, museums, the schools start changing. Because we all have some type of ideology about everything. So I don't know. So I hope that if I could just change one person, then that's good.
You asked the question at the end of your lecture, who are we? And I'm thinking as an artist, you as an artist, many of students here as artists, how do you respond to the artists that, as thinking about me and myself as an artist, the artists that feel tired by this, the artists that feel like they've seen enough of this, and yet should they feel obligated to still speak in a way that they feel like it's change and promote change, or do they have the permission to not speak about this? Like, I'm just curious what are your thoughts?
I'm tired. I'm tired. I've been on the ground for 4 years. The book is coming out, and I feel it's in me. I have to do it. I'm in it now, and I have to. But I'm tired, okay? Because I feel like I'm going to the universities. I'm talking. Am I really? I even question: am I bringing about change? Okay, but it's in me, and I have to do it, and I have to talk. We have to. I was at the University of Alabama, and I was doing a community engagement. And the first question I asked, I said, white folks. I said, when you were growing up in your households, was there any discussion about racism? 2 white girls spoke, young people. They said, we came here because there's a lot of stuff that we don't know, and we want to know, because if we don't talk about this, and how are we going to move forward? Because if not, we're going to go into a war, okay? So if you don't want to do it, don't do it. A lot of people are not going to go on the ground and protest. That might not be you. If you, as an artist, if you don't feel like you need to talk about this, you can't talk about it. If it's not in you, you're not going to do it, okay? But I'm in it like Nina Simone. And Harry Belafonte, what happened was about 3 years ago when all the shootings kept going on and it was in the media and stuff. You guys know who Harry Belafonte is, okay? He was, with the young folks, he actually was in the movement, the civil rights movement. He brought all of us together, but what he did was he had a concert. He had the rappers there, T.I., a lot of them, but who was on the top of the hill? Guess who was on the top of the hill? It was him, Jesse Williams, Van Jones, the mothers of police brutality. He brought us all together, football players. He sat us down. He told us about the story of how he got into the movement. Martin Luther King called him and said that he wanted him to serve into the movement. And he was tickled. He said, well, why do you want me? He's a celebrity. He's a singer. Why do you want me to join the movement? And he said, because artists are the gatekeepers of the truth. I'll never forget that. And he says, I'm tired. He said, I'm tired of black bodies and brown bodies being shot down. He said, I brought all of you here together because I'm passing the baton on to you. And what are y'all going to do? So if you want to keep it the same, we could sit here, not have these discussions, go on about our merry business and not deal with the reality. And we'll continue to deal with this. We're going to continue to have protests, okay? The country is going to continue to be divided, I don't know. If you don't want to do it, I'm tired. Mm-hmm. Say that, speak up. Talking about Nike? Talking about Nike? You know, that's a good, very, very, very good question. And what brings to mind when you talk about that is Colin Kaepernick and Nike. You guys know about all of that. And everybody understand what's going on. Do you understand that the reason why he did it was because of the black bodies being killed? He was not, my father's in the service, he was not disrespecting the flag at all. But the conservatives and everybody flip that narrative like they always do, and it gets everybody, the masses of the people, riled up. Oh, he's disrespecting the flag, okay? So when it comes to Colin Kaepernick, he is a millennium. He's only, what, about 26 or 27? I don't really know him, but I think that if a company like Nike could come in, you already know why they're coming in, because of the economics and the money, but I think if they've taken a stand to a certain extent, maybe it might help. I do not know. I have marketing companies call me to this day, and these are white young people, and they're calling me and they say, Sheila, we want to do something, but we don't know how to do it. See, nobody knows how to move forward in this country. So let's see how that plays out. I think Colin Kaepernick is going to be true to what he's doing, so we'll have to see. You know, I don't know. That's a real very good question. You know, so I'm not looking at it in a negative way. I'm looking at it in a positive way. You know, I'm dealing with, let me tell you what I'm dealing with. The NFL is coming to Atlanta next year, right? There's an organization, art organization called Wonderoo, art organization. I got an email about 2 months ago saying, Sheila, we selected you to do a mural in Atlanta. Nothing was said about NFL. Arthur Blank owns the Falcons in Atlanta, okay? And you have been selected. We've selected 9 artists, it's now 10. And they asked me, and I said, okay, I could do that, you know? And so they asked me to come to the press conference. I said, okay, I was in town. I said, I could come to the press conference. And I got an email 2 days before I had to go to the press conference, and I was told by the community director that if the news people come to you and talk to you about Colin Kaepernick or the NFL, this is some suggestions of how you need to answer this. And I said, they are talking to the wrong person, okay? So when I went there, I mean, it's like, Atlanta's like a city too busy to hate. The mayor was there, they're behind the project, the NFL host president was there, and I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into, okay? So what I've decided, because I have everybody calling me, and I'm tired, you need to do this because we know you're going to do the right thing, okay? So I'm working on a project with the NFL, and I'm going to do a protest within it and challenge them to see if I could get the image on the wall, okay? Because their theme, I didn't come up with that theme. They came up with the theme, social justice, okay? So I actually have this image because I was talking to you guys about it earlier. I started looking at some images back in the 60s, and the young people, are you guys familiar with Julian Bond? This is Julian Bond and the SNCC students back in the 60s. They came out of the civil rights movement, and they were younger. They were younger than Martin Luther King, and they were really pushing the voting back then, okay? And this is Julian Bond's daughter. I want to use this image and put it on the wall, but I want to do a new image. I want to represent the mothers of police brutality. I have Eric Garner's mother, she's coming down. I have Tamir Rice's mother, she's coming down, the young boy that got shot with a toy gun. And Oscar Grant was before Trayvon Martin, and they did a movie about him in Oakland, California. And then I have the mothers in Atlanta. I'm recreating that image. So let me see if I can get that on the wall. I want to give honor to these women because these women are looked at a certain way, and I want to show inspiration and empowerment to them. I rented out an Airbnb, and I'm going to be photographing content of self-care and healing. They are so excited. Okay, so let's see what they're going to do in Atlanta.